Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time zone it is, wherever you in the world, it is your Lord and Saviour. A very tired one, admittedly, because I spent all of last night playing Pokémon. And I tell you what, my body ain't built the same way it fucking was when I was doing that constantly as a fucking teenager and someone in my early 20s. Am I getting old? Yeah, I'm 30 this year. Whew! Anyway, enough about like a potential midlife crisis in the works. Yeah, I've been playing Pokemon Scarlet a lot recently, which I got last year, 2024, in the year of our Lord Talos, for my birthday or Christmas. I don't remember which one it is because they're so close together. And played it once and hadn't played it since, just because, I don't know, just a neurodivergent thing, I guess. Happens quite a lot with games and books I have these days. And I decided I was going to play it yesterday, and I've sort of been a bit engrossed with it, and hence me staying up last night playing it. And I was kind of taken aback, really, by it. One, by how fucking buggy it is. But second of all, as a long-time Pokemon fan that I've talked about in a video in the past, just how it just changes up the formula of things. Like, traditionally in a Pokemon game, you battle the gym leaders, take on the Elite Four, deal with the legendary Pokemon and stop the big baddies. But in this game, it just throws you into the fucking deep end. Like, right, go and have an adventure. You got your three friends / acquaintances who give you a task to do things. Like, one wants you to go and fight the gym leaders, one wants you to go and fucking collect herbs, which requires you to go deal with these Titan Pokemon, and then somebody else wants you to disrupt the 5 leaders of the Team Star, which seems a bit more than a bunch of schoolyard bullies as it was set up, but I'm interested to see how that unfolds. And I just think that's pretty cool, just as I said, as a long-time Pokemon fan, just how it just changed up the formula a little bit just to keep things interesting. And it doesn't tell you to do a specific one first, you can do whichever one you please. And I'll be very curious to see how people took on this task, and I imagine it's going to be a case of, a gym leader there, a leader there, as they sort of like interbreed map locations with each other. But I'm very excited to see what happens, and I'm just having fun playing Pokemon again, something that I hadn't felt for quite some time. But that got me thinking this morning whilst I was having my breakfast. What would a Vampire the Masquerade open world game look like? See, there was going to be a link in there somewhere, so if you stuck around for the last 3-ish minutes, you're totally based. Now you get to enjoy the video proper. But a Vampire the Masquerade open world experience was something that some people had hoped / expected with Bloodlines 2. Paradox are insisting it's going to be in October now, but time will tell, I suppose. But what would an actual Vampire the Masquerade open world game look like? Well, and this might be a controversial opinion, but I don't think it should be like a fucking huge ass map. Like, if you're dropped into a city, it'll be American based because the writers are kind of limited in their imaginations with that, and Paradox / Renegade just have everything so focused in America now. I don't think it would be the best idea to have it in a huge city, especially if you've got something like New York, where the city is like fucking bigger than most states, you know? Or something like that. But you know, it's a big fucking thing, and you would lose the scope of the small personal horrors of Vampire the Masquerade. Like, even with the visual novels that are set in New York, you don't explore through the story all of New York. They're just little snapshots here and there that are, yes, relevant to the story, but it's small and contained enough that allows emotions of the characters to be explored. See, the essence of Vampire the Masquerade, and I think successful TTRPG experiences of Vampire the Masquerade are fantastic when it does keep things rather small, and it's just little snapshots of a city, so you get a bit of a taste of not just the horror of Vampire the Masquerade, but the bits of the culture of the people that live there as well, which is also really important because it makes the world feel believable and breathable and alive and thriving. So good world building would mean that the city and the surrounding and the setting and all of that jazz is a character in of its own right, rather than just a backdrop for the players to have fun with. And for me, it wouldn't matter too much whether it was a large or a small open world, as long as it felt believable, because I'd much rather have like a small open world that had lots to do, lots to explore and lots to interact with, and it felt believable, rather than just like a huge canvas of nothing, you know. It's a difference between Vampire and, well, any of the more recent Assassin's Creed games, to be honest. That's the sort of thing that we're working with here. And things like Vampire and Infamous very clearly have, like, hubs, like designated territories, as it were, that you have to go and do shit with. But if there were like loading screens between them, I think there'd be like a proper hub-based environment rather than an open world. So the original Bloodline did something like that, in my opinion, which isn't to say that one is better than the other, it's just different. And I think that open world games is a spectrum, just like neurodivergency and other things you would typically describe as a spectrum, like colours. That's another one. Many open world games have a day and night cycle to make its world feel that bit more believable, so the players can feel like an actual passage of time. And I think whatever developer would take on the role of doing a Vampire the Masquerade open world game would be forgiven not to include such day and night cycle because of the nature of being a vampire, although that would provide a very interesting narrative opportunity, like an element of survival, like finding some place to hunker down for the night, and including fast travel would be a part of that, or even if fast travel was like as simple as like taking a taxi or a train or subway. It would depend on the city that you are basing your game in, to be honest. Or you could do what Vampire does, and like you can only progress the day forward and thus level up by like resting at a bed, so like the passage of time is felt that way as well. Or the game can just move forward different days, weeks, when certain milestones and the main quest could be had. Because there are different ways of handling it, and each one would present a different flavour to it, I think. And with the last two ideas that I've mentioned, the world could change a lot more rapidly depending on the story, what was happening, what the player did. But of course, main and side quests would also change these outcomes as well, and the environment around you, which is one of the joys of open world games, that you can actually see the world change as you do. At least when it's handled appropriately, that is. Then there's the quest/activities the player could do themselves, and this would vary wildly, again depending on where you're putting it. Also the time period as well is something to consider, but that would assume that Paradox have any semblance of creativity rather than just trying to turn Vampire the Masquerade into a D&D clone, but I digress. We're going to ignore main quest stuff for the moment, although I would think most of that would centre around the vampire being a member of the Camarilla, because that's what all the fucking Vampire the Masquerade seem to be limiting themselves to be. There's only like 2 examples what I can think of where a player can be a member of the fucking Anarchs. Bloodlines, which is like fucking 20-ish years old now, and the bad ending in Coteries of New York, a visual novel, but you don't really get to explore that. It's just your Anarch just a virtue of running away and being a pussy. Now, I don't think that this should be a Skyrim sort of affair where you can be under every single sort of faction and just operate like you're operating under none of them, with having like a little line of dialogue here and there, just acknowledge that you are part of this faction. That just simply wouldn't work with Vampire the Masquerade. Partly because there aren't so many factions that don't spawn off into cults, but being a member of the Camarilla or the Anarchs is a lifelong commitment, and as vampires are eternal, then yeah, like the politics and the ethos behind all of it, it just simply wouldn't work. So unless it was included as part of the main quest, where early on you had to make that decision and maybe you could jump side at another point, I don't think that should really be given to players to do. And I think if there was an open world game, they'd have you like flip-flop between the two of them, or like run 2 main quest lines together like that. I think that would just show a lack of understanding, in my totally biased opinion. So what about side quests and like activities? Well, I'm a fan of the infamous way of doing things, where you have a bunch of different scenarios that present you as like morally good or bad, or subjectively good or bad, or whatever the fucking developers dictate is good or bad. So maybe not like a karma system, but the thing with Vampire the Masquerade is that you've got to track that humanity, and different actions you could perform would increase and decrease your humanity, which would open off and close off dialogue options and other things that you could do. And it might have like an aesthetic change as well, like you could look more monstrous or more stereotypically vampire, like your skin goes paler, your veins become a bit longer, or you know, just something like that, just something to acknowledge the player visibly. You're an asshole, or you're a saint. Good job. Or maybe, as well as or instead of, you'd have some form of tracker that represented your upholding membership of the Camarilla and the Anarchs. Like, you did, I don't know, stereotypical anarchy things, or you upheld order, and like a bar would go up and down, and then depending on what was higher by a certain point in the game, that's the side that would take you in. That is, of course, assuming that you had a main quest that was focused around picking a side, which could be quite interesting, actually. or maybe there was like a third spicy option where at the end you became a member of the Spark, but I'd be very surprised if that was ever going to be a fucking option in a V5 setting, because of course any open world or any other video game setting within Vampire the Masquerade would follow through with the 5th edition timeline. And yes, the Spark have always been antagonistic, but they're sort of away, distant, doing their own little thing, you know. Which, yeah, has its pros and cons for sure. But there's lots that I could waffle about here, like side activities and things you could do for mortals, that how ghouls and feeding would go into this, but that's, at this point, all very subjective. I would obviously want things to lean more in the social side of things, like Bloodlines does, when it's at its strongest, and not when it is most rushed and buggy. But a lot of it becomes really subjective, and I wouldn't have a single fucking clue how applicable any of it would be in an open world setting, how to implement it at all, really, because I'm not a game designer of that sort, so my knowledge is rather limited in that frame of mind. But I would like to know what some of your ideas would be, if you let me know down in the comments below. So what would and wouldn't you want to expect to see and like to see in an open world Vampire the Masquerade game? Now, if you're interested in Vampire the Masquerade and want to experience the tabletop role-playing game with your buddies, you can go and purchase the books in the description below using those specific links, which allows me to get some of the coinage back, because I'm an affiliate from DriveThruRPG, and that allows me to provide more based content like this, as subjectively objective it is, or objectively subjective. Pick your poison. Now, if you've got those books already but want to continue to support me financially, you can copy and paste the special affiliate code and put it in the URL of any DriveThruRPG related site link before you add it to your cart, and that helps too. So you get books, I get books, and you get content for free, which is absolutely amazing shit. A win-win chicken dinner situation for you. But that may not be a viable option for you, you know, because times are hard and all that financially, which I totally understand. So if you can, that's great. If you can't, that's also fine. But what you should definitely do regardless is give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the Lord by Night channel, and share this video with any and everyone who loves what I do. And I'll see you on the next upload, wherever that may well be for you. And until next time, farewell.